Welcome to the Times of Israel's daily briefing. Today is Sunday, August 17th, day 681 of the war. Amanda Borschel-Dan here with our political reporter, Tal Schneider. Thanks for joining me today, Tal.
Hi, Amanda.
Large protests are taking place across the country, as well as a general strike in several sectors of the workforce, all calling for a return of the Israeli hostages now. Tal and I will discuss what we're seeing so far today across the country, and we have a short report from reporter Ariela Karmel from Hostages Square in Tel Aviv. Tal will update us on what is happening with hostage release negotiations ahead of the new IDF operation to take over Gaza City. We'll also speak about calls from the Danish Prime Minister to sanction Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and why. All of this and more when we're back. I'm Amanda Borschel-Dan here with our political reporter Tal Schneider. First, a war update. The Israeli Navy this morning launched strikes against a power plant south of the Houthi-controlled capital of Yemen, the military and defense officials said. The Israel Defense Forces, in a statement, said the strike hit energy infrastructure used by the Houthi terror regime near Sana'a in response to repeated attacks by the Houthi terror regime against the State of Israel and its citizens, including the launching of surface-to-surface missiles and UAVs toward Israeli territory. Local media in Yemen reported large explosions in the area that knocked generators out of service. Now, let's turn to the nationwide general strike that got underway this morning at 6:29 as families of the hostages protested the government's decision to expand the war in Gaza with the campaign to conquer Gaza City. The strike was organized by the October Council, which represents some of the family members of the hostages or bereaved relatives of those killed in the fighting that erupted with the Hamas-led massacre in southern Israel on October 7th, 2023. As of recording, some 25 people have been arrested so far. So, Tal, let's briefly give a bit of background to the strike. Then we'll hear Ariela Karmel's report from Tel Aviv's Hostages Square. So, why was this strike called today?
Right, Amanda. So we've seen for a long time, maybe over a year, that the public opinion is very much, in favor of ending the war in exchange for all hostages, 50 hostages that are still being held. You have like 70 to 75% in the polling, and the public discourse is very much for that in ending the war. And, in Israel, it used to be in the past that the government would listen to public discourse, but this specific government doesn't listen to public discourse anymore. They say polling is polling, we won election, and that's it. We're not, listening to any of this. And it seems like they don't care. And I think the public is very, very frustrated. You can vote in election, which will, according to the law, will be held on October 2026, maybe earlier, but this is the legal, the lawful date. And what can you do as a citizen? And the frustration right now grew bigger and bigger because with the threat of a new military operation surrounding Gaza City and what we call the central camps of Gaza, the Balach and the rest of the area, the lives of the hostages are in danger. We've seen a year ago how when the military approached an area where the hostages were held, the military did not know, and the terrorists murdered them on the spot, 6 of them exactly on the end of August last year. So this is the big fear right now. Those people survived in horrible conditions for almost 2 years. Some of them are soldiers, some of them are citizens that were taken from their home, some of them were in the Nova Festival. They are starved almost to death, and a military operation may bring an end to their life in the most gruesome way. And I think the people of Israel, you have a majority, as I said, 70 to 75%, they are supporting the end of the war in exchange for all hostages. And the government up until now said it will not announce an end of the war. So I think this is public outrage, public support for those families. Mother of Matan Angerst, who is a soldier, said, and they keep on saying it could have been any of you. I mean, Amanda and you and I, we're all, it's a mandatory service in Israel. It could have been our kids in the same situation. And I think the people of Israel, they want to show solidarity. They want to show that the way the government is going is not, acceptable to them. And this is the only way they can do it.
Okay, let's hear Ariela's short report now.
I'm at Tel Aviv's Hostage Square, where rows of empty strollers are arranged in the center. An exhibition symbolizing both those who were killed on October 7th, but in particular, those who still remain, the 50 hostages. Attached to the strollers are bright yellow signs reading, "A mother never gives up." This is the mothers' protest. Under a large shaded canopy, dozens of mothers sit with their babies and young children. There are the strollers that line the space alongside other exhibitions filled with photos of the hostages. The square is steadily filling with people carrying signs, wearing yellow ribbons. This is part of a series of demonstrations held in the square as part of the nationwide general strike called today by the families of the hostages. The opening speeches of today's strike have started with a march beginning alongside the square. Ariela Golden, sister of Hadar Golden, an IDF soldier killed in Gaza, whose body has been held by Hamas for 11 years, speaks with great emotion. She says, "I came here from the Golan and every intersection was filled with people." She calls on all Israelis to take to the streets, adding that the hostages are the heart of Israeli society. We must bring them back in order to return to ourselves and our values. Noga, the aunt of hostage Alon Ohel, says she sends him strength every day from Manu. As hard as this is for me, it's nothing compared to what he is experiencing. We cannot stop fighting for them. The march of protesters has now entered Hostage Square, joining the hundreds already gathered. Among them are family members of the hostages, including Einab Zangauker, mother of hostage Matan Zangauker, who stands at the front with other relatives. The hostages are all of our children, she says. We must save them now. The crowd erupts in chants of "You are not alone, we are with you," echoing through the square as yellow signs and flags are raised high.
Okay, thanks to Ariela Karmel, who is in Tel Aviv's Hostages Square all day, because from morning to night there are going to be events held there. And so far we've seen several politicians make their way through the square. I'll just add that the organizers believe that about 1 million people are going to go through Hostages Square today for the events. We've seen already Israel's president, Yitzhak Herzog. We've seen the opposition leader, Yair Lapid. The day is still young when we're recording here. But Tal, do you expect to see anyone from the coalition pass through here?
We don't expect to see anyone from the coalition. There is some sort of an atmosphere within the ministers of this government that this specific event is against the government and not for the hostages. A minister said early in the morning, this is a failed demonstration. It is taking advantage of the families of the hostages, and it's actually helping Hamas, because once you have this type of demonstration, the Hamas says, okay, we are not going to give up anything in the negotiation because the Israeli public is outraged. So it's like a they think it's sort of a game. I wanted to say one more thing about the demonstrations today, Amanda, because this is a grassroots event. The Israel big unions, the Histadrut, the union of most of the workers in Israel, which I think they are organizing about 500,000 workers and employees around the country, did not join. They joined in spirit, but they were not allowed to announce a big strike. The reason for that is they were trying to do it a year ago, right after those hostages were murdered, the 6 hostages. And the court ruled that they are not allowed to be part of a political operation. They can only, if it's a workforce dispute, but this is not a workforce dispute. So they're not allowed in. So they announced a couple of days ago that they will support it, but they will not announce a general strike. So what you see right now, it's really hard to fathom how, a lot of municipalities, a lot of places of work announced that they will allow their workers to join in. Many places are closed, restaurants and cafes, and we expect to see shrinking in the number of in the usage of credit cards along with the day because people are not shopping, not going to restaurants, and so on. However, it's very hard to measure because the unions are not in. It's very hard to measure how big it is. And it's really grassroots because it depends on what people will do today. They can, skip work if their employers allow this, but they can all just take a day off. And from what we've seen until now, the public is outdoors in a very, very hot day, summertime. People are, some of them were taking vacations or whatever, but they're out. And we see a lot of people out, but I think the big numbers will be in the afternoon when it will cool down. And as you said, there's a rally from the train station to the hostage square. And the president, the Israeli president, he started his day very early at like 8 a.m. in the hostage square showing solidarity. So you have the government kind of detaching itself from the situation and even preaching against it. And I think the people, at least, I think hundreds of thousands of them are taking part all over the country. It's not just in Tel Aviv. It's big events in Jerusalem, big events in Eilat, in the Galil, and everywhere. You mentioned it earlier. So there is a map in Times of Israel website that you can see the entire events all over the country. It's hundreds of events all throughout all the day.
Right. Please do check out our live blog to get more updates on this and see what's going on right now. Let's go to a short break. And we're back. I'm Amanda Borschel-Dan here with our political correspondent Tal Schneider. On Friday, the Times of Israel's U.S. Bureau Chief Jacob Magid learned that Hamas negotiators in Cairo this week signaled a willingness to come down from demands they made last month that led to the collapse of hostage talks in Doha. And Arab mediators passed along the development to Israel, but Jerusalem responded that it is not interested in another partial ceasefire and is only willing to forego plans to take over Gaza City if Hamas agrees to all of its demands for ending the war. So what is the current status of talks as far as you know, Tal? Does Israel even have a team deployed?
So we had the head of the Mossad in Doha, Qatar, a couple of days ago on a private jet. I think Times of Israel reported that. We hear...
But we also reported, Tal, that he was there for Mossad business and not for negotiation.
Right.
So that's a little confusing.
Yeah, I mean, there was an announcement from the Prime Minister's office that he's not there for negotiation. It was very hard to translate that and understand what's going on. The chief of the negotiation is, by the way, the Minister Ron Dermer. So he was not in Doha, and the Mossad chief, which was the former heading the negotiation, I mean, it felt to me maybe as if the Prime Minister's office didn't want to admit that Dermer is not engaged. I mean, it was really hard to understand what's going on with that. So what I'm saying here, Amanda, there's like bits of information, like Jacob reported on Friday, and this tour that the Mossad chief took to Doha, and we don't really know more than that. Let's hope that, we think that maybe the threat that the Prime Minister made with respect to conquering the city of Gaza and the camps in the middle of the Gaza Strip, maybe it was made in order to bring the Hamas back to the table. That's one option. Obviously, there is the option that the threat is real and he's actually planning. But there is things going on in Gaza as we speak with respect to the IDF in the neighborhood of Zaytun. It is eastern to Gaza City. It's not really inside Gaza City. Things are going on the ground, but we have, unfortunately, little knowledge to what is the content of that.
Right. The war has not at all ceased in the meantime. And the big change, as I see it, in terms of the hostage negotiations is, of course, Bibi, our Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's refusal to be part of a partial plan anymore. No more partial releases. It's all or nothing. And in fact, he's very stringent and he's very strong in saying that he wants all of the war goals to be completed in one shot. So, Tal, I mean, this is the Middle East. You start with a no, and then you maybe get to a maybe. Do you think that this is a negotiation tactic that could, in fact, lead to something this time?
It's very hard to tell. What we do know, Amanda, is that two ministers from his government keep saying that if he will get to the end of the war, they will step down. So when he says I want a complete demilitarization of Gaza. I want Hamas out of power. I want all 50 out, and I want Israel keeps the military control, the grip on what we call the perimeter, at least. I mean, he didn't say specifically what is his military plan. So, I mean, from what we understood up until now, even if those criteria is met, two ministers with the two parties that are now holding the government, they will step down. So it's kind of hard to see what's the end game here. We know that the Knesset convinced back in, I think, mid-October, and then, Netanyahu may or may not start to think of the elections, because elections are, going to be held in 2026 anyhow. You can hear in my voice that I don't know much of the details, because it's very hard to understand what he's planning to do.
Okay. In the meantime, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said on Saturday that her Israeli counterpart, Benjamin Netanyahu, has become a quote-unquote problem, adding that she would try to put pressure on Israel over the Gaza war, as her country currently holds the European Union presidency. So these comments come amid mounting international pressure on Israel over the war with Hamas in the Gaza Strip. But also, she was saying that the Israeli government is going, quote unquote, too far because of the new settlement plan to build over 3,000 housing units in the E1 area of the West Bank, which would connect basically between Jerusalem and the city of Male Adumim. That was presented by Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich on Wednesday. So, first of all, Tal, let's talk about E1 a little bit. This is a piece of land that has been in the news for, I don't know, maybe 10 years even. It's a plan that has been rolled out and pulled back and rolled out and pulled back and rolled out again. Of course, right now, Smotrich was on the ground holding maps. So that means something, right? That it'll actually happen this time? I don't know. What do you think, Tal?
So it's a crucial area, because if Israel is proceeding with the plans and building and expanding settlements in that area, it's actually cut the future Palestinian state into two. They will be unable to move from northern part to the southern part of the future Palestinian state. So over the years, many leaders around the world, including US presidents, they said you cannot do that because you are prejudging the end situation, and the end situation is supposed to be negotiated and not one-sided, one-side building. So it's a huge problem. It always has been, and it may bring on Israel more objections from around the world, as we've seen from the Prime Minister of Denmark. One interesting point she made, to my opinion, is that she compared Israel to Russia. She said, we're not ruling anything in advance, but just like with Russia, we are designing sanctions to target where we believe they will have the greatest effect. So this specific sentence is very interesting, because I think many of the European leaders, and including, you can put into that Canada and Australia, have come to the conclusion lately that they have no effect and no way to influence Netanyahu anymore. And this is the reason some of them took to the track of announcing a Palestinian state, at September at the UN. And she was asked, would you announce a Palestinian state? And she said, no, I think this is rewarding Hamas. That as long as Hamas is in power, I'm not going to go on that route. I'm going to go to another route in which she compares Israel to Russia. And that's very sad, I think, for the Israelis. She has influence, as you said, in the European Union. The European Union was contemplating, Horizon plan. This is the science and culture plan that Israel is part of. Getting a lot of grants. They were thinking of stopping that. They were thinking, of other directions, the mutual commerce and so on. Up until now, they did not have the majority in the European Union for that. But some of the actions in the European Union demand that the 23 countries members will vote unanimously, For the science plan, you don't have to get unanimously. You have to just need a majority. So, I mean, it will be another very, very bad step for our country. But as she says, I think the Israeli prime minister right now doesn't listen to any of those warnings. He ignores them.
Right. You're talking, of course, about how E1 would bisect the West Bank, the Palestinian West Bank. And of course, there's also a third piece, which is the Gaza Strip already. So in terms of any kind of two-state solution, it's already a bit of a jigsaw puzzle kind of map. But this indeed would make it even worse. And so that, I think, is the significance of this E1 plan, as you pointed out, that is making the European Union and people such as the Prime Minister of Denmark on edge, shall we say, putting it very, very, very modestly. So Tal, thank you so much for all of your insight and updates today. And I'm sure there will be many more updates on the live blog over this day of strikes and protests. So please check out our live blog for these updates. Tal, thank you so much.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks for listening to the Times of Israel's Daily Briefing. Please check out another installment tomorrow. This episode was produced by Adina Karpuch. If you have any questions or comments about this or any other episode, please drop us an email to podcast@timesofisrael.com. Until tomorrow, shalom.